Hello, and welcome to another episode of Daggerheart DM Pocket Guides. My name is AK, and I decided I wanted to do things a little differently today because Daggerheart is all about collaborative storytelling, and I was tired of talking solo into the camera, so I invited my best buddy, Maddie, GM extraordinaire.
Hi, everybody. I'm a best buddy.
Yeah, you are.
And a forever GM.
Mm-hmm. But not really a forever GM of Daggerheart. Yet.
And that's why we're here today, because this video is going to be for those forever GMs that know D&D and Shadowdark and Blades in the Dark and all the games that have dark in the title like the back of their hand, but not Daggerheart. You've had a lot of experience with Daggerheart, and I've had just a smattering. And so these are kind of high-level questions, really, that I'll be asking, because this assumes that you have GM experience, right?
And if not, listen in. You might glean a thing or two. But yeah, I think you put it well, Matt, that this is a video that we're kind of targeting. We're targeting you, coming from other systems and trying to pick up the ins and the outs of Daggerheart. So we're just going to kind of make this a little bit more of like a free-form conversation where Matt's going to start pelting me with questions. If y'all have questions, we encourage them in the comments, and we'll keep making these videos as long as you keep feeding us those delicious, delicious questions. Where do you want to begin?
Feed me, Seymour.
I want to begin at the very beginning, which in almost every TTRPG is known as the Session Zero, right? It is the meeting of the game master and the players for the first time, usually the start of a new campaign, and it is controversial. There are a lot of GMs that don't like the Session Zero. A lot of players don't find it necessary. I personally have always liked it as a GM of any kind, but it really does feel to me that Daggerheart puts an enormous amount of importance, hangs a lot of importance on the Session Zero itself.
Yes.
What with the connection questions, the building of experiences, kind of getting to know, even the map making element, which is so freaking cool. And if you are on the side of slightly anti Session Zero, I will say, at least as a player for Daggerheart, you should give Daggerheart's version a try, because it really, there's a lot of hand-holding, at least as a player. And so my question really is just, what then would make a successful Session Zero in your mind as a Dagger Master, right?
Yeah.
What adding these elements, like what makes it rise above the 5e version, or what makes it sparkle to you?
Sparkle. I'm all about sparkling. Can I tell on us real quick, Matt? Even though you and I have never been anti-Session Zero, we really only recently started mandating and kind of requiring them. And oh, buddy, the difference it has made in our more recent campaigns, Daggerheart or not. I will say, as someone who is fairly new to the TTRPG space, I didn't start playing until 2020 and played my first few campaigns, no Session Zero. If you're holding out and just haven't gotten around to it, regardless of how you feel about it, what Matt said, give it a try. As far as what to do, you already hit the nail on the head in a lot of ways with just the natural elements that Daggerheart provides. So the biggest ones, as you've already mentioned, are experiences. So experiences are something that seems very daunting and weird and random. I think when we all first heard about experiences, we were like, what even is that? And it's not until you start playing that you realize just how fun they can be. So players may come to the table and have some semblance of what they're working with as far as a backstory, who they are and how they got here. But I would first of all encourage them to come up with at least one experience as part of Session Zero and not come in fully baked. The connections questions, obviously, that's the big thing. This is a system that's going to take you by the hand and lead you through the party hooks and how everybody relates to everybody else. And so lean into the connections questions, but don't feel like you have to use the connections questions that are already baked into your character sheet. You can, as the story begins to unfold and people begin to hear, this is what I'm thinking, and what do you think about that, and work together. As far as the facilitation goes, be sure you're reminding players as a GM that they have agency, they have autonomy, they can wander off the page, and if somebody said something that really sparked their interest, chase that down. Don't box yourself into the 3 kind of predefined questions. Those are there for the people like me who have a fear of the blank page and need that spark to get started right. But if they don't need that, wander away. You could even, as a GM, our good friend Rice Combo over from Bladebound Saga has a very large, long, comprehensive list of background questions, not just by class, but also by ancestry that he shares with players. And so if that's your kind of jam, to pre-generate a list of different kinds of questions, feel free. And then the, kind of final piece is the map making. Our party tends to play primarily digitally, but there are all kinds of ways in this day and age to share screens and let people doodle on what you're looking at. And that honestly has been the biggest, we do a lot of one shots even with Daggerheart, but I'll facilitate 20 or so minutes at the beginning of a 4-hour session just to kind of breeze through some of those things. And I am telling you, when you allow and encourage players to name places on the map, it really does change everything.
Case in point, our friend Austin, who has built a campaign frame called Queen's Light, which is gorgeous. He designed it to have a very robust session 0, and boy, did he ever use every single idea that we wrote down in the map, and it became a part of. It can be very, like you said, very powerful, and it was, the players are right there.
Yep.
Right.
Daggerheart is, I think, personally, as a newer GM than you are, for example, I think Daggerheart's a great system for new GMs, both new to the game and new to GMing, period, because of its focus on the narrative fiction and the collaborative storytelling over the mechanics. Yeah. And it has taken, for me personally, a lot of pressure off of me to realize, I don't have to come with all the answers. We're going to create the answers together around the table. Has just lifted this really tremendous weight off of my shoulders, where I used to think in other systems, especially, I got to know everything. I have to build everything. I have to have, rip cords for any possible scenario. And I don't feel like that in Daggerheart, which is freeing.
Definitely freeing for the GM, though. A follow-up question that I have, probably we'll touch on this a number of times today, because it is a very big part of Daggerheart. It puts the role-playing in role-playing games. It is very, very story-driven. And so those who are just love the tactics and the very minute rules may have a harder time with this. And one example of that, I've been wondering, in your experience, have you run into players that may live in a more Warhammer or even Pathfinder world? Do they get freaked out by things like experiences? Because experiences are just absolutely, the player comes up with something and they get a +2 next to that something, and then they use it. But there are no guardrails there, really. There are suggestions, and you could use those. But have you found players to be frightened of this power that they're given?
Here's what I'm going to say about that. And I've said this a lot on this channel. Play the damn game. In what we do, and we ourselves are talking heads on the internet. Hi, what we're doing right now.
Right.
And there's a lot of channels out there, and there are a lot of people out there who are spouting their opinions, having not played it yet. And I go back to kind of one of the first things I said of experiences didn't really make any sense to us before we played it. An initiativeless combat system. I remember vividly our first look at Daggerheart, March 2024, and I heard it was initiativeless combat, and I was like, no way. There's no way. I'm going to come up with an initiative. We have to homebrew that. Was my knee-jerk reaction. And I could not have been more wrong. So I say that a little tongue in cheekily, as far as play the damn game goes, right? But assure your players that once they get around the table, all will make sense. It is, of course, normal to feel trepidatious, to feel nervous, to feel confused prior to gameplay.
That's any game. That's
any game.
Right.
I feel like that all the time. That's just my like baseline, right? I'm nervous. But like as the GM, probably the best thing you can do is say, I see you, I hear your fears. They are not unfounded. I promise you it's all going to come together at the table. And I have yet to run into a situation where even someone who was like, experiences sound dumb, or, like, I just want to hit people hard, And I say this as a combat gremlin. I love hitting things hard. I love casting spells for damage. I'm not a good, buff queen around the table because I want to go hit things. But it really does. And so that's the main thing is as a GM, especially for either new players or new to Daggerheart players, just that like little bit of assurance of like, yeah, it feels weird. It's all just you wait. And then you as the GM, here's my favorite part. I love watching new players. I love just watching their brains explode as they're like, I can do that and that and that. Like I don't have kids, but it must be what a parent feels like, on Christmas morning or birthday morning or during Hanukkah when you're just watching your kid shred into that perfect gift. And you're just like, yeah, I did that. Yeah. It feels real good to watch your players experience the magic. So just assure them that you're going to be their partner in crime for that journey.
I love
Does that help, Matt? Or was that too woo-woo of an answer?
Not at all, because here's the thing. I'm glad to finally start seeing other people call this system rules medium. Like, yeah. I immediately thought it was rules medium, and I based that almost entirely on these sorts of things, the experiences, the building about the more esoteric woo-woo elements of Daggerheart. Because you've got the 5e and the Pathfinders, which, don't have these kinds of mechanics and openness, and then you've got like masks. You've got all the powered by Apocalypse and even lighter systems that have these elements of just feel your character, man. What would your what would your experiences be, man? And then those experiences come, they are canon immediately. And I think it's so freeing, and I think it's so fun, and I love that this game has that kind of aspect of, So it did help a lot. Thank you. Okay, so we're finished with session 0. Yeah, we're great session 0, and everybody's happy and psyched about their experiences, and
we're vibing, as the kids would say.
We're vibing. Our stuff is on the map. So immediately, players run into the Hope and Fear dice, and it is, like, on paper, actually a great concept, and not that hard for the player, honestly, because once you get over, I'm not rolling 1d20. I'm rolling 2d12s,
and adding them
one
together.
Of them is
make sure your new players know that. I went through a couple of sessions in the very beginning of this where I forgot to tell the players who were new to this, and I felt horrible. They were taking a higher one. Even on Reddit to this day, even though this game has been fully released for 2 months now and was in beta for a year, there are still people saying, oh, you just take the higher one, right? So very common misconception about the duality dice is that you add them together, you don't treat them separately.
Yes, you do get to add them together. So, the max roll is actually 24. So just keep that in mind. But anyway, you've got these 2 dice. Their beloved D20 is practically unused. It just starts collecting dust. The nice thing about this game is, like, it doesn't at that point doesn't like put much on the players to have to understand what the hope and fear dice are.
Right.
Because that's the GM. That's where the real test of a Dagger master in this game becomes. So do you have any tips on that balance? That finding that balance of pushing the story forward as you are constantly taking the input. I rolled 18 with fear. I rolled 4 with hope. I rolled, So talk about that. Not just resolving actions, not just like you have success or you have a critical failure. It's way more nuanced than that.
Yep. So a few different responses to all of the. There's a bunch of questions within that question, which I love.
Questions. Sorry.
So no, I love it. So one of the biggest things about Daggerheart is that rolls are called for when there is a meaningful action. There are other systems that have trained us to roll for everything. I walk into a room. What do I see? Roll the dice. I smell something funny. What is that? Roll the dice. Can I pick this lock? Roll the dice. That does not have to be the case for Daggerheart. And again, I say this as a dice gremlin. Like, I love my dice, but saving those rolls for a meaningful action, right, is going to be the first thing first. So it's not just perception check on top of perception check. So there's, kind of like step number 1 is figuring out what that looks like for you and your party. We had a great comment where on one of our recent videos where somebody was talking about how they're like a really like exploration heavy type of a party. So they don't like to hand wave through jaunts in the forest. They want to, kind of uncover and unturn every stone. So like my answer for that party might be a little bit different than just your, average, I'm hopping into this for a one shot or playing a mini campaign arc. So you'll need to get to know your players best, but for the most part, try and save those rolls for a meaningful action and not just skipping, stones in the forest. So there's kind of part 1 of that question. Part 2 is that there is no nothing happens. So there is no just straight failure in Daggerheart. There is everything that happens pushes that story forward. So if they crit, radical success, all of their hopes and dreams come true. They're clearing that stress. They're gaining that hope. And then like you as the DM are kind of talking them through what happens. When they succeed with hope, they got what they wanted. And then it's a yes and. Like, so yes, you were able to pick the lock effectively and also this happened. The success with fear is a yes but. Like, so maybe the lock popped, but you broke your tool while doing it. Like, there's some element there that complicates things. On the failure with hope, it's a no and. So maybe you didn't get what you were going for, but there's something, you hear something, you see something else happens. And the thing is that as a DM for Daggerheart, you can start to pull in the party when this happens. You don't just, I know that there's spotlighting and we do want to keep the spotlight on the rogue that's trying to pick the lock in this moment. And, so they fail, but with hope because the wizard just noticed something. What is it that you just noticed? And so that's how we can kind of like shift things around and play with things. And then of course the failure with fear is the big, like, ooh, that's the no, but that's the big complication.
Right.
And because that's the thing is your moves as a GM are driven by those fear tokens. So like when they succeed with fear or fail with fear, you might get a chance to act. You can activate an adversary or describe a countdown initiating and why and things like that. So that's kind of the next part about that. And then the third part I kind of tucked into that answer, but that really is to use your players. It's not solely on you to tell the story. So if they fail with fear, it is okay to ask your player, what caught your eye? What you picked locks 1,000 times. Why couldn't you pick this lock? And let them tell you, as opposed to you thinking you have to fill in every single blank as a DM.
You mentioned GM moves, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. But what you just said, that example that you just gave is immediately helpful, because I would imagine that the most difficult of that the 4 possibilities that for GMs, even coming from other systems, would be the failure with hope, because even in D&D, you've got a critical fail, which a lot of DMs can kind of play it as a a massive fail, like a
Yeah.
failure with consequence. So
Yeah.
those might exist in your game, or a critical hit gives you even more. But yeah, the failure with hope is just the hardest to conceptualize. And what you're saying is,
Ask.
if you're currently at a loss, can you put it back to the player? So give me another example of how you've adjudicated that role.
I'm going to Daggerheart DM you right here and now, Matt. I'm going to toss this back to you. Help me set up a scene. So where is our party that we're talking about right now?
Right. We're standing in front of a door, of course, and the thief is picking a lock, and the wizard and the guardian are standing behind them. There is an enormous fire-breathing dragon coming at us across a bridge. And so we've just gotten to the bridge, and it's just this door, and it's the dragon's fine. It's coming no matter what.
Yep.
Yeah.
But are we going to get through the door?
All right. Get through this.
So we have limited time to get through this door and hopefully get ourselves to safety and put ourselves, at some distance between the thing that wants to kill us, right? And so I failed, meaning I didn't hit the difficulty that as the GM I had set. So that lock is not happening right now. And this is where, as a GM, I could, knowing my party, I could either go ahead and describe the environment and why it's hopeful. Because something happens and the dragon is trying to come across a bridge, but like the slats are actively falling into the fiery lava below. And the dragon actually trips in this moment, giving my party another chance to try and make it through this door.
Another minute or so.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or I could say, you play around with it. Don't do always one, right? So there was one way where as the GM, I kind of took the lead based on the action that my rogue failed. But you could also in that moment, especially if you've been talking a lot in a session, you could say, you have picked 1,000,000 locks and this is just not catching. But suddenly your guardian gasps. You were there in the post kind of as the lookout. What happened that has given you the hope? And you could then kind of switch over to the guardian and call on them, or the rogue that's picked, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
But notice how the story keeps moving forward. So they didn't get the lock, picked. They didn't get the door open. They're not in safety yet. But there's something in the story that's happening that has not caused certain doom. What is that thing? And then you as a group discover and write that story together.
Well, since you did such a good job with that, let's go ahead and hit the other roles possible and real quick and just see what you would do with each of them.
Yeah, I think on a failure with fear, I would absolutely take that moment to they're not able to get the hands are getting sweaty, and you can describe what it smells like. Is this a fire breathing dragon? Is this what kind of adversary? And so we're building the tension using all of our systems. What do we see? What do we hear? What do we smell? What do we taste in this moment? And I now have a fear token because you rolled with fear, giving me that. So I could either bank it for later, but this seems like a pretty crucial moment. So maybe in that moment, the dragon attacks, or the dragon cries out for someone else, and it's
for another dragon.
For another dragon. Something happens in that moment, a meaningful action from the adversary, because I'm now playing with that fear that you just gave me with that roll. Is probably how I play that. Or just whoever's in the back of the line. We've got the rogue up front, we've got the guardian, and then we've got the wizard and the druid, kind of flanking and casting spells. So, roll a dice, pick between the druid and the wizard, and one of them's getting attacked. And now suddenly we're in combat. We went from an exploration and a narrative beat, and now we're fighting a dragon. And that's the consequence of the action and the roll. Rather than you saying, okay, here's what's going to happen. The party's going to cross a rickety bridge, and they're going to watch some of the slats fall below into lava, and then they're going to see it. You don't have to come up with all that. You're only focused beat to beat. So in that moment, with that failure, this is the next, and that's all you have to focus on. You don't have to come up with the matrix prior to a session. I like it so much more. And then critical success, of course, they're able to, run through the door, get it closed, and maybe the dragon takes some kind of damage. Maybe they do trip all the way and fall down, or something else. You could introduce other adversaries, other allies. They're trying to get through the door, and all of a sudden they realize that the dragon is under attack, but not from them. And we don't, and maybe that's you pushing the story further down. We don't know who saved us from the dragon attack. And maybe that's a PC or a group we're going to meet later. Like, the story is always tumbling forward with this.
And I love, you explained the entrance to combat, which is another scary thing, I think, for new Dagger Masters can be.
Yeah.
But how many of you GMs with other games that don't have this initiative-less system get really bummed out when you hit initiative time? Where, like, you in your mind, you are seeing your enemy and you're seeing your players, and you want it to be, you want them to attack. You want them to just attack, or you want to let your players just attack.
Yep.
You can't really do that well in 5e because someone's going to say, shouldn't we roll initiative and start this thing?
Yeah.
Okay. So that was really well. Yeah. Like, you have more room then to bring in another NPC. I get it. I like it.
I find myself, as I'm building, giving myself not outs, but like multiple ways this could all go down. So maybe they're going to fight the big bad, or maybe they're going to offer the big bad a spa day. And a lot of times the party doesn't choose to fight. The roles dictate the fight, which is fun too. Like in that scenario, we could have gotten through this encounter in all scenarios, but in that specific failure with fear, where the dragon attacked. So, and that's even, I think that's fun as a GM when you don't even expect for there to be. Right. And then suddenly we're fighting a dragon.
So
and you could,
in some ways there are fewer guardrails in this situation. And then sometimes they're so satisfying, and the guardrails make so much sense because the dice really have to.
I gotta give credit again to our good friend Daniel from Bladebound. One of my favorite uses of an improvised adversary that he pulled off spectacularly. We did on his channel an actual play called Scapegoat's Plunder. And I was lucky enough to get to play in that actual play. And we streamed our session 0. And we were, it was a group of us, we were pirates, we were out on the seas. And Daniel asked our friend Seth, like, what do you see? And I mean, we're on an ocean, we're in a boat, right?
You're on a
that
boat.
Answer could have, he could have been, I mean, I see rocks with sirens singing us their way. You know, I see some tentacled beast coming from the depths below. No, Seth said a Titan. I see a Titan. Like Daniel has this moment of like, oh my God, I have to throw a Titan. And that was how we entered the campaign, was fighting a Titan. And Daniel later was like, I did not see, did not have that on his bingo card. But because of this beautiful little, he was able just to pull up an improvised adversary stat block right down here. And so, was able to be like, well, obviously a Titan's a tier 4 baddie. And it would have been game over if we'd done like a full combat, but we got some licks in. Daniel didn't see that coming, and because he's such a great GM, was able just to throw that together, and Daggerheart allowed him those guardrails. So have fun with it.
But it was also Daniel's choice, right?
Yeah.
If you find that to be terrifying, to pass off the story to a player, a player that might force you to have to think and create a Titan on the spot, don't do that. You don't have to do that. Right. Like that's not a mechanic. That is a possibility, which is great. Similarly, you started off by saying that action rolls are not used as much as other games, particularly 5e and Pathfinder. You're not constantly rolling, but there are reaction rolls, which I don't think were part of the beta, the first beta, were they?
I don't remember
if they were. I didn't know how to use them, but when I ran into them, when I saw other people with far more experience than me using reaction rolls, there was a relief there. And the reaction roll, I think can take a little pressure off of this hope and fear constantly going by saying it's a little bit more. It's more of a reaction. It's more of a check. It's more of a, the dragon does attack you. Give me a reaction roll, which has no consequences. You don't, I mean, besides failure or success, you don't have to worry about the hope and the fear and factor that in.
I want you guys to look at hope and fear as resources. And so therefore duality dice are resource generators. And so that's and so a lot of times, again, I'll put it on the player. Like if I can tell that they're like, I want to make an instinct roll right now. I want to do it. I got to make an instinct roll. You can tell, you can feel that energy, right?
Yeah.
I will say, great. A consequence of that could be you're giving me fear. And let them choose. Like they're like, okay, yeah, I guess I don't, or they're like, heck yeah, no, I still want to do that. In fact, I want to burn a hope and use an experience. And I mean, I rarely, when I give players the choice to make an action roll, rarely do they say no. But I do try and give them the choice as opposed to forcing it. I feel like in other systems, we tend to say, sure, go ahead and give me an investigation check. Here, I say, would you like to make a finesse roll at this time? And make sure, especially when we're just getting started, that they understand, yes, they could generate hope for themselves, but they could also generate fear for me, and that is scary. So that is one thing. As far as the reaction rolls go, reaction rolls, not all, and one thing I love about Daggerheart, there's really no silver bullet. There's really no like always in every single case, no exceptions. But by and large, a lot of times reaction rolls are specifically called for like as part of an adversary's features or stat block, or are called for on the PC's domain cards. So it'll kind of explicitly tell you, which is good. Okay. And I mean, I love the domain cards. Like they really did an amazing job of boiling so much down into a couple of sentences. Yeah. So the big thing to know as a GM about reaction rolls that, to your point, does get missed easily is that reaction rolls do not generate hope or fear. So it is a straight duality dice roll. You add whatever relevant modifiers, and you may spend hope in order to add an experience if you would like. So if the GM says, go ahead and make an agility reaction roll, you would roll your 2d12s, you would add them together, and you would add your agility modifier. And then, say they have an experience called, good in small spaces. They could be like, can I spend a hope to add that experience? And because they're trying to maneuver out of a teeny tiny space, I'd say absolutely. But, as a player, I know that like if I make a roll and spend a hope to add an experience, there's a pretty good chance that I could make that hope back. Whereas on a reaction roll, there's no hope for me making that hope back. So that's pretty much it. No hope or fear on a reaction roll, just the straight roll, the modifier, and any relevant experience that they'd like to add.
Gotcha.
Clear as mud?
Yes. No, very clear, period. There's no mud involved. So there's a couple of rapid fire questions that are more just mechanic. One of them is, why do you think they went with a D20 for GMs and not D12s for GMs? Why do that?
I'm gonna probably misquote this. Spencer is on record with this answer and will probably cover it far more eloquently than I will. It comes down to math. It comes down to math. Yeah. Let me look smart.
No,
just kidding. And so the statistical probability, boy, there's words I never thought I would say, of on or around a 13 with 2 D12s is higher than that median with a D20. So the D12s were chosen to ideally provide more consistency. So you're probably going to get, because if you think about it, you've got 2 dice, and so you have any number of ways to get to a 13, whereas with a D20, you only have one way to get to a 13, right?
Yes.
So they built it that way, so that way the players have more consistency in their rolls, with still a big possibility of rolling incredibly low, incredibly high, or critting. And now we have more ways to crit, again, rather than just that 20. The reason that the DM rolls a D20 and not 2 D12s is we don't want the DM to be consistent. We want the DM to be swingy. The DM is the heel. So we either want them rolling really high and being like, fuck your life, bing bong, here's my crit. Or we want them rolling, and that happens to me a lot. I tend to, as a GM, I'm like, wow, I'm rolling like all 18s, 19s, and 20s. And I'm like, I can't get above a 4 right now. And that is by design of the system. So that way the players are kind of more consistently doing their thing. And then the GM is kind of the moving target that everybody's trying to hit.
Right.
And I'm sure there's a million other reasons too.
Heroes.
Yeah. Yes.
But with the fear, it That's the balance. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And that's what I love about Daggerheart. I don't remember who said it first, but I love that dice rolls in Daggerheart are non-binary. They are a spectrum. And how fun is that? How fun is that for there to be any number of things that could happen? And especially because a spectrum is not a straight line. It's not like high, low. It's a wheel, right? And so there are any number of things within here that could happen and that we can flavor our adventures with. And I think that's so fun. So
it's so fun.
I'm sure we'll hear in the comments if I got the statistical probability stuff wrong. The rules mathematicians will let us know.
I think it was probably close enough. I think it was close enough.
Spencer, I hope I did you okay with that explanation.
Similarly, advantage and disadvantage do differ for these two then.
Yeah.
With a player, because you can crit more, the concept of it, I haven't actually thought about this, but just why do you think it's different, and how have you felt with that? Because advantage and disadvantage for players is just the addition of a d6, which is very, very different from a d20 rolling twice and taking the higher one. It is a different number.
Which is what GMs do. So players, to add disadvantage, roll a d6 and subtract the number. To add advantage, roll a d6 and add it. GMs, just like 5e, roll 2d20s. If you're at advantage, take the higher. Disadvantage, take the lower. I'm sure that it's another very mathy answer.
Yeah.
I think maybe to protect the sanctity of the crits, because when you think about rolling 2d20s, I'm giving myself 2 opportunities as a player to roll a natural 20 to get that crit.
Right.
Whereas this way you're honoring that there's really only one shot to crit, which is important, right? And preserves the meaning of that crit, but still gives you an added, because that's what advantage is supposed to be. Advantage is just supposed to make it that much easier for you to accomplish the thing you're trying to, whether it's hitting or succeeding in some way. And so I have to wonder if maybe taking away the roll a second d12 and maybe you'll crit does kind of protect and honor that, the sacred sphere of the critical success.
I like it.
I know,
I like it.
We've on our channel shared some feelings that there really is no crit fail in Daggerheart.
Right. There isn't. And it did bother me at first. It did bother me at first. But the more that I've played, the more I see how, especially on the player side, you're constantly, in some ways, you have more chance for crit fails, as I mentioned before, in that with the fear mechanic, right?
Yeah. When you think about a crit fail, talk about a story-stopping mechanic.
Right.
You didn't get it. You look like a fool. You tripped. You tried to, you fired an arrow and hit your ally.
Broke. Right.
Whereas in Daggerheart, you failed with fear. Again, it's the swinginess of it. It's the storytelling. And as the GM, I could either tell the player what happens or I could invite them, okay, so you didn't hit and something else happened. You tell me what happened. Yeah. And that keeps the story rolling forward more so than you tripped and fell, I think.
Yeah. That's great. That's really good. I feel like the next couple of questions are all a little bit related.
Okay.
I'm going to ask a question about Daggerheart's success in making combat a collaborative thing, but also spotlight balanced, giving each player the space, and not having initiative.
That is a really great question, Matt. I think we should save it for next time. Oh!
Okay. Understood.
You got to leave them wanting more.
I've got too many questions, so yes, absolutely.
No,
let's
not
leave
too
them wanting
many
more.
questions. Yeah. So whatever questions you have, thank you so much for tuning in for this first take at me and Matt turning on the mic and chatting with each other. Drop your questions. We love making these videos. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. You can join our gorgeous Discord community. Is free. The link is in the show notes. And we've got channels and lots of phenomenal Dagger masters and players who want to talk about this game with you. And so let's just kind of keep the good times rolling there. And then we're going to pick up next time with, sounds like you've got a treasure trove of questions.
I do have a treasure trove. There's more. So yes, until next time.
All right. We'll see you next time. Bless your Daggerheart.
Bless you, Daggerheart.
Bless your Daggerheart.